Part 2. Character Design and Backstory. I really like the design of Rattlesnake Jake. It is both simple yet effective. His design was roughly based off of the bad guy Lee Van Cleef or Angel Eyes from the 1960s Western film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Even though he doesn't wear any clothes like most of the other characters in the movie, he still has a distinguishing appearance that sets him apart from the rest of the characters. As production designer Crash McCreary said, he wanted Jake to look like the guy you certainly wanted on your side in a bar fight and be intimidated just by his presence alone. I would say the most distinguishing feature of him are his eyes. The combination of bright reds and yellows in his eyes give off an eerie glow to them, as if you would believe that he is actually from hell, and they seem to stare right into your very soul. His black, wide-rim hat definitely adds to his sinister appearance, as his hat puts most of his face in shadow and brings out his eyes more. One part of the design I thought was really clever was making a gun part of his tail, which solves the problem of him using a gun without his hands. His gun has 6 gun cylinders stacked on top of each other. I don't really know what type of gun it is supposed to be, but I'm guessing it is very similar to a Gatling gun because of its rapid firing power. At first, I was a bit puzzled as to why he has so many ammo belts strapped along his body, but then it made sense since his gun uses a lot of ammo all at once. I also like how dirty and gritty they made him look. It shows that he does have some wear and age to him, and that he has been through a lot of fights. That is why Jake comes off to me as one of the much older characters. In the early stages of character development, they thought of making Jake an albino rattlesnake because Jake was the Grim Reaper of the West, and pale white characters are often associated with death in Western European mythology. But they decided against that and went with the natural rattlesnake skin colors, as most people are afraid of rattlesnakes anyway. Personality-wise, to me, he does not seem to be like a total bad guy. I think one of the moments that really defines the character is when Jake is about to tackle the mare lying on the ground, but then is stopped by a gleam in his eye. He looks down to see one bullet lying in the water, and then turns to Rango and says, "I tip my hat to you. One legend to another."
One bullet. I tip my hat to you. One legend to another.
That shows he still has some morals despite being an outlaw, and that even though he does not totally like Rango, he still respects him after he proved himself to be a worthy legend just like Jake. Which, I think, is the reason why Jake did not kill him in the end, because Rango proved himself to be the legend he said he was, and Jake would not kill those that earned that title. Another moment is when Rango has his gun pointed in Jake's face, and Jake's eyes slowly get wider and wider. And when Rango gets interrupted by the mare, and as Rango walks away, Jake gives him that look.
It only takes one bullet.
You ain't got the nerve.
Try me.
Oh, Mr. Rango, aren't you forgetting something? Hand me your gun, Sheriff. Now, Mr. Rango.
In that moment, he slowly starts to realize that he might have been wrong about Rango, and actually starts to take him seriously. At first, Jake didn't take Rango seriously because he knew right away that he was a fake, and that he would never have the guts to actually kill him. But once Rango comes back and they go face to face, Jake starts to think he might actually go through with it. Which is why Jake gives Rango his respect towards the end, because he never thought he would have the guts to do it. Also in that moment, Jake starts to get a little bit scared, because mostly he starts to see the so-called killer look in his eye that Rango didn't have before, and starts to realize he might be seconds away from death. Also, I think even though he is a bad guy, I don't think he would ever kill an innocent person, at least not intentionally anyway, because he never killed Rango at the end. Once he found out the mayor was behind the whole thing, Jake goes after him, completely ignores Rango. Jake didn't kill Rango because not only he had given him his respect, but he knew Rango was just an innocent bystander in all of this, and really had no intention of killing him in the first place. If Jake really wanted to kill him, he would have done it when he first met Rango. Also, when Jake shoots Wounded Bird, who attempted to shoot him from a tower, Jake does not fatally wound him. He knows Wounded Bird survived the gunshot because we see him again at the end of the film. From the looks of it from the film, Jake only shot Wounded Bird in the shoulder. If he really wanted Wounded Bird dead, he would have shot him in the chest. Jake mostly shot him just to prevent him from getting shot himself and get Wounded Bird out of the way. So really, there is a lot more to Jake than it seems, and really he is not one of those straight black and white type villains. We really don't get much into the backstory of the character to explain why the way he is. But I'm guessing his backstory would be something like Lord Shen's from Kung Fu Panda 2. Have some pretty big traumatic event happen in his early life, and a very driving motivation to shape the way he is today. My guess is that it would have something to do with the gun on the end of his tail. He does not have a normal rattle like other rattlesnakes would have, and since the rattles are pretty much their trademark, I think Jake would feel a bit shamed by not having one. At first I thought Jake's tail is cut off where his rattle would be, but no, actually his tail is cut off just before the black and white striped pattern at the end of his tail, which would mean that not only is his rattle missing, but a good part of his tail is missing too, meaning his rattle could never grow back. With that, I can suggest two types of scenarios for his backstory. Number 1, he was born with part of his tail missing. In real life, rattlesnakes give live birth, and their young are often known to have deformities when they're born because rattlesnakes give birth in such massive litters. With that, his parents would have probably abandoned him because rattlesnakes with deformities rarely make it to adulthood. Jake would have found some way to survive on his own and put the gun on his tail just to show his deformity does not handicap him. Scenario 2, which I think is more likely. Jake lost part of his tail from an attack from a hawk or some other form of predator. Jake would have survived the attack, but he would have been ashamed and laughed at by other rattlesnakes because he didn't have a rattle, since having a rattle is kind of their trademark. He would have become revengeful and hateful from everyone making fun of him, and he put the gun in the end of his tail to redeem himself from his shameful state and to prove that he is not weak without a rattle. But, of course, this is all guesswork. Who really knows what could have caused him to be the way he is today? Hopefully in a sequel, if there ever is one, it would explain Jake just a bit more.